And welcome back. Henning Pauli here again with another ATEM mini setup. No, in this case, it's a mini extreme. Or is it extreme? It's so confusing. Well, there's 21 different models. And if you've seen my series on the Blackmagic Design ATEM switchers, you might have a little bit of a better idea what the differences are. And maybe you've sat through the camera video and then you have a little bit of an idea of what the cameras can do. In today's video, we're showing an HDMI setup with two Blackmagic Design cameras, and just to show you that you can also incorporate SDI cameras into that with longer cable runs, we're doing that with a little bit converter, just showing different things. Always remember, you could do this with a smaller switcher, you could do this with just one camera, so just a ATEM mini ISO and maybe the micro 4K G2. I deal with this every day and it's still difficult to get those names right. Maybe that could work. So you can scale the system down, use whatever screens you want, just get some ideas from this video of how to utilize it in your setup. The actual video that we shot looks not so good. We didn't actually put time and effort into setting it all up right and the lighting and the white balance. So this can look a lot better, but it's more about the setup than the actual result. Sorry. Enjoy. And then there's more videos if you want to look into where this journey can take you if you're crazy like I am. Okay, on to the next setup. And I know you're going to say, oh my God, this is way too complicated and way too big and look at all this stuff, because Leslie can show you, look at all this stuff. Well, this is not a complicated setup. We did a couple of things so that I can show you certain things. So before we turn on the recording and you see the actual output from the ATEM, I'm going to run you through what we did. This is our editing suite, and I set up the studio camera 4K plus G2, the one without Ethernet, the one without XLR, and we're not running SDI. We're running into an extreme, not the ISO version, that's the one that's discontinued. I don't have the ISO version here, but that would be the same. An Extreme 8 HDMI. So out of this camera, which we call number 1, out with an HDMI cable. And if this was a fixed setup, trust me, you could make it quite a bit cleaner. We set this up in an hour and we're going to tear it down in 5 minutes. So there are cables all over the place. But the camera needs power, we have this on the floor, and we're running an HDMI cable. Of course, if you wanted it with different cables, you could run SDI, you could even run SDI with the HDMI switcher. These cables are thick and very unwieldy, but that allows me to have a longer cable run. Then, on this really cool Edelkrone stand, I'm running the micro camera for an overhead shot, and you cannot see the stand in the shot, as you can see over here. If we go to the camera number 1, you can actually see it up there. So made a mistake. Let's do that. There, perfect. So you can really position this nicely to get an overhead shot, and weight-wise, this is the perfect camera. I ran into a little bit of a snag. I wanted to show you that you can run this with HDMI. Even though it has SDI, you can run it with HDMI into one of the HDMI switchers and remote control it. It seems that the old version, which I have because the new version is not available anywhere at the moment while we film this, the old version cannot be remote controlled with HDMI, only with SDI. So I cannot do that, but trust me that the G2 is absolutely compatible with HDMI remote control. So we're going to have to manually control this. We have 2 lights here that we're going to turn on once I'm sitting there. They're battery powered. Oops, I messed up. Then camera number 3, just to show you, you're not going to have something like this. This is a big-ass video camera, but it has an SDI output, 4K capable. We switched this to HD. But even though we're running an HDMI switcher, you can run SDI. So the long cable run and the flexibility of just one cable, all that is absolutely possible. If you wanted to have someone actually sitting there running around with the camera, if you wanted someone running to the street with a camera, we could have an outside reporter. I have, I think, 3 100-meter SDI cables, 3G. Absolutely possible. This cable is not 100 meters. I could have someone running around in the house and doing, reporting, bringing that into the video. And that is running over here into a bidirectional, I use a 12G microconverter, which then with HDMI is going into our camera 3. On camera 4, I have this laptop where you could show websites, you could do tutorials, whatever you wanted. And software-wise, we have this desk here, and there's a Mac actually doing the software control if you wanted that to set up certain things. So let's see, for example, set up a super source, which this switcher can do. And you can now see that there's camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4, and a background, which was in the switcher from my friend Sebastian, who I borrowed that from. Thank you, Sebastian. So the extreme versions have super source, which allows you to do 4 cameras and a background, which is amazing for tutorials and lessons and stuff like this. And technically that's the same. We have 2 screens connected because the extreme allows 2 outputs. Again, all this, we have 4 cameras. You could do this on the mini versions. Okay, I just want to show you options. We have this, which is right now set to program, and this is also set to program. The second output, so you can see whatever I'm switching here, switches. The second output has to be set software-wise, but the first output you can actually set right here on the switcher. So it's very convenient to just go quickly to a camera, focus it, and it's not going to affect your program. So right now we're going back to multi-view. I'm not going to mess with the layout of the multi-view because Sebastian has it set up a certain way. I would rename the cameras. I would have program and preview here, my cameras there. But again, I'm not going to mess with the switcher. I already changed the frame rate. Sorry, going to have to remember to set that back. Again, if this wasn't a temporary setup, all this cable stuff would be rather hidden. You can see with my desk, it's all going up here, which it wouldn't. It would actually come from the back, so you wouldn't see any of this stuff because it would be a fixed setup. And then it's coming out of the desk right here, which is something that you should probably be doing. And then this is actually not such a horribly ugly setup. If you had something like this in your desk, an outlet for cables, even with the 8, it could be a rather neat setup. Now the 8 has headphone out. Thank you, Blackmagic Design. So I can monitor what's going in. And once we start the recording, I'm actually talking into a lav mic from Sennheiser. That's the EWD portable. It's a killer setup. And that's going into one of the mic inputs. And that's how we're going to record audio. Of course, I could be utilizing the mics in any of the cameras, in my Canon camera and the Blackmagic Design cameras. I could be actually plugging this into the inputs on the cameras and just then turning the audio on there. Absolutely possible. If it's in a better location, just do that. One of the other reasons why we're using the 8, I want to show you camera control, which again, on the micro I can't do, but on the studio camera we can do. And Leslie, once she sits here operating the switcher, will show you how to change gain, focus, and even shutter, maybe even the blacks. It is a little bit annoying with the focus. You go up and down and it takes quite a while to happen. So if you want it to be done quickly, maybe use the software. If you're always going to use the software and you're only going to use 4 inputs, maybe you don't need the 8. But wait! There's the dual HDMI outputs and the super source and some other cool things. So if the money difference isn't the big thing, maybe go for the 8 because it does offer a couple of things that are very cool, independent of the fact that it has more inputs. I mean, it's really just a 2-camera setup, or we have the mobile camera and a Mac, and that's it. I could plug more things in, but we're talking about realistic setups. All this, technically, you could have 2 of the micro cameras and have one up here, for example. You know, do gaming stuff, have another one on the other side, and they are this big. You wouldn't necessarily even notice them on the desk. Have it all run in the back of the desk, come out right here. It would be a very nice and clean setup. What we did here, not the nicest and cleanest setup. You would also, of course, have to have a light up here, lighting you, but this is all completely customizable. Now we're gonna go to me sitting there and actually running the ATEM. Hello. So now we're running on the ATEM. This is the main cam, the studio cam, with a Panasonic 15mm 1.7 lens. Now Leslie will try with the limited parameters on the switcher to set it up. We have the lights on of 20% on each side, and it's of course too bright. So Leslie, what are you going to start with? With gain. You're going to gain it down. So she's going to step it down now. See, we're already getting there. So you could, to really see it, of course, make it big on the screen. Right now she's looking at the multi-view. Sorry that you're not seeing that, any of that. Much better. Now I would usually have the screen, a screen, where I see what is being switched to, right in front of me, right under the camera. The danger is that you kind of look always away from the lens. You have to get used to it, and after 10 years I'm still not used to it. In this case, it's over there. So continuously looking there wouldn't make a good video. But again, it is a temporary setup. Good there? My eyes are in focus. Producer giggles and doesn't know. She's used to doing this workflow in 4K. So for her, the HD version is probably never going to look in focus. Also, by clicking on the actual panel, she's used to doing that in software, or on the 4K8, there's now a dial, which is okay, but the software control is a little bit more detailed. So maybe the camera control on the panel isn't the very best. So last thing would be shutter, which technically, if we're recording in 25p, I would always keep on 50, but you could go up and down and also set up brightness with the shutter control. However, when you're doing it in software, you actually see where you are. You see what your shutter is set to. So if you look over, Leslie, into the software, what is the shutter set to now? 150, we're back to 150. You see the gain and you see all these things. On the panel, you don't. All you see is the resulting picture, which isn't a bad thing, but it's nice to know where the settings are. And now we're gonna start switching around. She could put me, she has never worked with a little one. I was chuckling, you couldn't even see me. You could now actually put me in picture. And again, it's rather small, she said, but she can, of course, put me in different positions. And the extreme actually has a setting for 2. Can you see the 2 of them? Whoa, look at that. Isn't that neat? And that by default, that goes to camera 1 and 2. But you can, of course, switch what that is. I mean, but that's a preset in the thing. So you could actually have a website going in the background with nice something, who knows what, or actually have a different kind of clip in the back. Actually, you could switch to camera 3 on the actual switcher. Yep. And switch, and that is the background now. So that is my mobile camera. You can now see the ATEM right there. I mean, yeah, okay. But you can see these things are possible. So the picture-in-picture, that next to each other, I actually like a lot. But the other stuff is kind of very, very tiny. So picture-in-picture off, please. Let's go to the super source. There we got the super source. No frames on the super source. There used to be frames on the old switches, which would be nice to just have a border around this right here, a little black border, but they don't do that anymore. But you can see I could show you this camera like this. And setting up your super source, you actually can set up all windows, whether you have 1, 2, 3, 4, what's in them. You could even switch around in the windows and have different angles while you're filming. This is a great solution for people looking for picture-in-picture stuff. So if you had a camera person in the room, you could, of course, have something like this. Again, going to HDMI, even though this is SDI. Doing this with HDMI cables, length is an issue, and connection. There is an HDMI port down here, but realistically, I would want to make sure that the cable is securely fastened to my hand or something, because you're gonna rip on that connection. However, this SDI, that is absolutely stable. And you can see, I can now walk around the room and actually do zoomies and all that kind of stuff. Show you snow, capped houses. If you have a cameraman in the room who's not working on a Blackmagic Design camera with a focus and blah, 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 and expensive zoom lenses, having a video cam with a 3G output for HD or a 6G/12G output for 4K is a good idea. But again, any camera with a SDI output is gonna run, I'm gonna say, starting at maybe 3K. So it's definitely a more advanced setup. You could work with something like this. You probably have something like this, a vlogger camera. This is a version 4 of the Sony. Here you can see that RX104. How do I zoom in? Well, I got this, manually. Boink! Leslie could do this if it was the new version of the camera. There you go. This is the RX104 from Sony. They're very, very good cameras. Swivel screen, learn from this Blackmagic Design. It does 4K, but not long. And I can't use it right now because the battery is empty. And charging it via USB is only possible if the battery actually has some charge. But it has an HDMI output, micro, and we did in the past actually incorporate that into videos. And you can totally see something this small is going to be great somewhere on the table. This has autofocus. However, be warned, this is $1,000. Of course, there are smaller versions and other cameras you can use. All to say is, even though you have your higher-end Blackmagic Design cameras, which I recommend, you can easily incorporate cameras you already have into your setups. Incorporating computers, PlayStation, Xboxes, cameras with SDI, and really cool cameras coming from above, because the Blackmagic Micro 4K G2 is of a size and weight that is completely compatible with any kind of overhead setup. And filming a table from the top, go back to this. I mean, that's just way cool for any kind of arts and crafts stuff, you know, knitting, woodworking, whatever you want to do. They are perfect for that kind of content. This is a setup that took us, I'm going to say, an hour to set up. We know what we're doing. It might take you longer, but this took about an hour. We have a computer and 3 cameras. We could easily get more cameras. It's just a matter of more cables and power supplies. And we're going to tear it down in 10 minutes. But if you're doing this as a fixed setup, maybe around your desk, maybe around your workstation, maybe around what I'm doing here, you would very likely get it to relatively clean without cables everywhere, which is really what you want. And whether you're going to go for an HDMI setup, SDI setup, a mixed setup like we have right here, it's all up to you. Whether you want to do camera control through the Extreme, or you're going to save your money, buy a Mini and do the camera control through the software, up to you. You don't want to go with Blackmagic Design cameras and not do camera control and set it up on the individual cameras, up to you. The ecosystem is there for you to pick and choose as you want. I recommend going with as much Blackmagic Design stuff as possible, because A, that makes Sweetwater happy, and B, it makes Blackmagic Design happy, and C, no, seriously, it is the most convenient thing if you have a Leslie. If you have someone sitting there, you can sit here and someone does the focus for you on the software. It's usually, when it gets a bit more complex and camera control and all that stuff, it is a two-person job. Unless you're sitting actually right in front of your computer where you can do it yourself. Now we're going to move on to yet another setup featuring the new ATEM SDI Pro ISO. So I hope that gave you a couple of ideas of what's possible and maybe where to get started. Again, you don't have to get everything that you saw here. You can start with one switcher and one camera. It doesn't even necessarily have to be a Blackmagic Design camera. It's all possible. And once you start putting the pieces together, you're going to work a lot faster and create content much more efficiently. All links are below. Thank you for watching. And as always, animals at the end. And there's more videos. Watch those too.